Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations. Weston Pierce had spent 10 years building what he believed was a rock-solid marriage. At 36, he'd established himself as one of Houston's most promising structural engineers, known for innovative designs that blended efficiency with elegance. Standing at 6'2" with broad shoulders and piercing hazel eyes, Weston commanded respect with his quiet confidence and analytical mind. When he'd met Laurel Bennett in their mid-20s, he'd been captivated by her sharp intellect and ambitious nature. Laurel possessed striking beauty with her auburn hair and emerald eyes, but it was her fierce determination that drew him in. She'd worked as a paralegal then, dreaming of becoming an attorney. "I'll be partner at a top firm before I'm 40, she told him on their third date, her eyes gleaming with conviction. "I believe you," Weston had replied. And he did. Their wedding had been small but elegant. Weston's parents, retired school teachers who'd saved diligently, had helped with the down payment on their first home. Laurel's father, Hank Bennett, a retired Marine who'd raised her alone after her mother abandoned them, had given her away with pride and a rare show of emotion. For the first 3 years, they'd operated as a team. Weston's career ascended as he became the youngest project lead at Axiom Engineering. Laurel excelled at her paralegal position at Montgomery & Walsh, a prestigious firm specializing in corporate law. They bought a larger home in an upscale neighborhood, traveled to Europe twice, and began discussing children. Then Laurel announced she wanted to attend law school. "Now's the perfect time," she'd said. "We're financially stable, and I'm not getting any younger." Weston had supported her decision completely. "We'll make it work," he promised. And he had kept that promise. For 3 grueling years, he'd shouldered their financial responsibilities while Laurel focused entirely on her studies. He'd declined a position that would have required extensive travel, sacrificed his own MBA aspirations, and taken on consulting projects on weekends to maintain their lifestyle. Laurel graduated near the top of her class and landed an associate position at Thornton, Blackwell & Ross, one of Houston's most prestigious law firms. Their combined income had nearly doubled, but something fundamental had shifted in their relationship. "We need to expand our social circle," Laurel had begun insisting, dragging Weston to gallery openings and charity galas where he often found himself standing alone with a drink while she networked. She'd started working increasingly late hours, her explanations growing vague when questioned. Perry Davenport, Weston's closest friend since college, had voiced concerns over beers one evening. "She's different since law school," Perry observed cautiously. "Are things okay between you two?" "Just growing pains," Weston had replied confidently. "She's establishing herself professionally. Things will settle." But they hadn't settled. Communication had deteriorated into perfunctory exchanges about schedules and finances. Physical intimacy had become increasingly rare, with Laurel claiming exhaustion or scheduling conflicts. On their 10th anniversary, Weston had made reservations at Laurel's favorite restaurant. She'd canceled at the last minute, citing an emergency with a client. He'd found himself alone in their immaculate kitchen, staring at the expensive watch he'd bought her, a watch that would remain in its box, untouched, for weeks. That night, he'd called his Uncle Arlo, a weathered former oil rig worker who'd been more father than uncle after Weston's dad died. "Something's off, Uncle Arlo. I can't place it, but I feel like I'm losing ground." "Trust your gut, son," Arlo had replied gruffly. "A man's instincts exist for a reason. They've kept our species alive this long." 2 days later, Axiom Engineering had announced budget cuts due to the loss of 3 major contracts. As a senior project manager, Weston had been called in by Human Resources. "Your position has been eliminated," the HR director had explained, not meeting his eyes. "We can offer 8 weeks of severance." Weston had walked to his car in a daze, wondering how he would tell Laurel. As he drove home, his phone buzzed with a text from her. "Need to talk tonight. Important." For a moment, he'd felt relief. Perhaps she'd sensed his stress. Perhaps tonight they could reconnect, strategize together as they once had. He couldn't have been more wrong. Chapter 2. Fracture. Weston stood in their spacious living room, the evening light casting long shadows across Italian marble floors. He'd just finished explaining about his job loss, already formulating a plan to leverage his professional connections for new opportunities. Laurel's face had undergone a remarkable transformation during his explanation, from irritation to disbelief to cold fury. You've got to be kidding me, she hissed, her manicured hand tightening around her wine glass. You're unemployed? Now, it's temporary, Weston said, maintaining his composure. I've already reached out to. Do you have any idea what this means? Laurel cut him off. I was going to tell you tonight that I'm being considered for junior partner. Do you know how it looks if my husband is unemployed? Weston stared at her, recognition dawning painfully. That's what matters to you? How it looks? Don't be naive, she snapped. Everything matters in this world. Perception is reality. We have savings, Weston countered. I'll find something quickly. This doesn't change anything fundamental. Her laugh stopped him cold, a harsh, cutting sound he'd never heard from her before. It changes everything, Laurel said, setting down her glass with deliberate control. I've been carrying too much of our social advancement anyway. You've become stagnant. Too comfortable. Comfortable. Weston's voice rose. I've been working 60-hour weeks while maintaining everything here so you could focus on your career. And now what? She demanded. I'm supposed to support you? Explain to my colleagues why my husband is sitting at home? No, I won't do it. She stalked to their bedroom, and Weston followed, bewildered by this person he suddenly didn't recognize. Laurel, this isn't you. We're partners. We've faced challenges before. She was pulling his clothes from the closet, throwing them onto the bed with violent efficiency. I've been considering this for months, she said coldly. Your job situation just forced my hand. I want a divorce. Months. Weston repeated numbly. We had dinner with your father last week. We were discussing a trip to Napa. Appearances, she said dismissively. I needed time to get my arrangements in order. Arrangements? His mind struggled to process what was happening. What arrangements? Laurel gathered an armful of his clothes and brushed past him, heading for the front door. In disbelief, he followed her as she marched across their manicured lawn and dumped his clothing on the grass. I've already spoken to an attorney, she announced, turning to face him. I'll be staying with a friend starting tonight. You have 3 days to vacate the house. This is my house too, Weston said, his shock giving way to anger. You can't just. My name is on the deed as well, and I make twice what you do. Did, she corrected with a cruel smile. I can and will file a restraining order if necessary. She turned back toward the house, then paused, delivering the killing blow over her shoulder. You're useless to me now, she said, the venom in her voice unmistakable. I've outgrown you, Weston. I need someone who enhances my life, not drags it down. Weston stood frozen, watching her disappear into the house. Neighbors had appeared on porches, witnessing his humiliation. Slowly, methodically, he began picking up his scattered clothes from the lawn, folding each item with mechanical precision. He didn't beg. He didn't shout. He just picked them up. Inside, he could hear Laurel on the phone, her voice animated in a way it hadn't been with him in months. He carried his clothes to his car, returned for more personal items, and drove to Perry's apartment. She said what? Perry exclaimed after hearing the story. Man, that's ice cold. There's someone else, Weston said quietly, the realization crystallizing. She has arrangements. She's staying with a friend. Want me to find out who? Perry offered. As an IT security specialist, he had resources. No, Weston decided. Not yet. I need to think. That night, unable to sleep on Perry's sofa bed, Weston made 2 phone calls. The first was to his Uncle Arlo, who listened without interruption before speaking. People show you who they are in crisis, son. Believe what you've seen. I believe it, Weston assured him. What I'm trying to decide is what to do about it. That depends on what kind of man you want to be, Arlo replied. The kind who gets knocked down and stays there, or the kind who gets up and settles the score. The second call was to Malcolm Hayes, a former client who'd often expressed interest in poaching Weston for his boutique engineering firm. I'm finally a free agent, Weston said when Malcolm answered. Axiom let you go? Their loss is my gain, Malcolm replied. Come see me tomorrow. I've had a project in mind that's perfect for your skill set. Weston ended the call, his mind beginning to clear. He wouldn't be unemployed for long, and he wouldn't be the pathetic ex-husband Laurel clearly expected him to be. By morning, a plan was forming, one that would require patience, precision, and a willingness to embrace a darker version of himself than he'd ever allowed to surface. Chapter 3, Revelation. 1 week after Laurel had thrown his clothes onto the lawn, Weston sat across from Malcolm Hayes in the industrial chic conference room of Hayes Innovation Group. This is precisely the solution we've been searching for, Malcolm said, examining Weston's design modifications. The city contract is practically guaranteed with these adjustments. I'm glad to hear it, Weston replied, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the inner turmoil of the past week. Your official start date is Monday, Malcolm confirmed, sliding a contract across the table. I'm offering 15% above your previous salary, plus performance bonuses. You'll have your own team. Weston signed without hesitation. I appreciate the opportunity. Don't thank me, Malcolm said with a wry smile. I've been trying to get you on board for years. Frankly, I'm surprised Laurel didn't push you to make the move sooner, given her ambitions. Weston's pen paused mid-signature. You know Laurel? Malcolm appeared momentarily uncomfortable. Our firms have crossed paths. Thornton handles some of our legal matters. The conversation shifted to logistical details, but Weston had noted Malcolm's reaction. After the meeting, instead of returning to the extended-stay hotel where he'd been living, Weston drove to his uncle's modest ranch house on the outskirts of the city. Arlo Pierce was tending to his prized tomato plants when Weston arrived. At 68, he remained barrel-chested and strong, his weathered face a map of hard-won experience. Got the job? Arlo asked, wiping soil from his hands. Better than the old one, Weston confirmed. But that's not why I'm here. Inside, over coffee strong enough to strip paint, Weston outlined what he'd gleaned so far. Laurel had filed for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences. She was requesting the house, a significant portion of their savings, and had already hired Bridger Townsend, a notoriously aggressive divorce attorney. She works for a powerful firm with connections throughout the city, Weston concluded. I need to understand what I'm up against before I make any moves. Arlo grunted. You need Nash. Nash? Weston questioned. My nephew by marriage. Works as a private investigator. Ex-military intelligence. Doesn't advertise, doesn't appear on Google, and doesn't come cheap. But he gets results. 3 days later, Weston met Nash Brewer at a dive bar far from Weston's usual haunts. Nash was lean and watchful, with prematurely gray hair and the relaxed alertness of a predator. Arlo says you need information, Nash stated, nursing a club soda. Weston slid an envelope across the table. Everything I know about my soon-to-be ex-wife and her activities over the past year. Plus a retainer. Nash pocketed the envelope without checking its contents. What exactly are you looking for? The truth, Weston said simply. Who she's involved with. How long it's been going on. And anything else I should know. Nash nodded once. Give me a week. 6 days later, Weston's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Coffee shop on Westheimer. 1 hour. Nash was already seated in a corner booth when Weston arrived, a manila folder on the table between them. Your wife has been seeing Beckett Hargrove for approximately 8 months. Nash began without preamble. He's 39, divorced twice, no children. Managing partner at Thornton, Blackwell & Ross, which puts him several levels above your wife professionally. Weston absorbed this information silently. They've been careful, Nash continued, but not careful enough. They booked separate rooms on firm trips, but used the key cards interchangeably. They've used the firm's executive apartment for meetings. And they've recently purchased a property together through an LLC. He slid the folder toward Weston. Photos, dates, property records, everything you need. There's more. Hargrove has a pattern with female associates. Your wife isn't the first, though she appears to be the one he's taken furthest. Meaning? Weston prompted. Meaning they're engaged, Nash stated flatly. As of 3 days ago. Private ceremony planned for next month in the Caymans. Small gathering of close friends and colleagues. The dissolution of your marriage is being expedited. Weston felt an odd sense of calm settle over him. That's not possible, even with an uncontested divorce. Money and connections make many things possible, Nash interrupted. Hargrove donated significantly to Judge Preston Whitfield's re-election campaign. Whitfield handles many of the county's divorce proceedings. I see. Weston opened the folder, examining its contents methodically. Anything else I should know? Nash hesitated, then reached into his jacket and produced a small digital recorder. They discussed you. Thought you should hear it. Weston pressed play. Laurel's voice emerged, slightly tinny but unmistakable. He's always been so predictable, reliable to the point of boredom. The perfect stepping stone. A male voice, presumably Hargrove, responded with a laugh. And now the stepping stone has served its purpose. You got through law school, got established, and now you're ready for the next level. I've always admired your strategic thinking, Laurel. It's almost too easy, Laurel replied. He'll probably thank me someday for pushing him out of his comfort zone. Weston stopped the recording, his expression unchanged. Thank you, Nash. This is thorough work. There's one more thing, Nash added. Hargrove isn't as financially solid as he appears. He's leveraged to the hilt. Mortgages on multiple properties, significant credit card debt, gambling habits he keeps carefully hidden. The new property they purchased together? He convinced your wife to put up most of the capital. For the first time, Weston smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. That is useful information, he said quietly. Very useful indeed. That evening, Weston sat alone in his temporary apartment, spreading Nash's findings across the table. Photos of Laurel and Beckett Hargrove entering hotels, dining intimately, embracing in a parking garage. Financial records showing joint investments. A copy of an engagement ring purchased from 3 weeks ago, while Weston was still coming home to Laurel every night, still believing they had a future. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and considered his options. The conventional path would be to use this information in divorce proceedings, perhaps secure a more favorable settlement. But that would be predictable, reliable to the point of boredom. Weston Pierce had been those things once. Not anymore. He picked up his phone and dialed Perry. Remember when you offered to help me find out who Laurel was seeing? Weston asked when his friend answered. Of course, Perry replied. I need a different kind of help now, Weston said. Something that requires your particular skills. Name it, Perry said without hesitation. I need everything you can find on Beckett Hargrove. Financial records, passwords, private communications. Everything. There was a brief silence. That's not exactly legal, Wes. Neither is what they've done to me, Weston replied calmly. Are you in or out? Perry's sigh was audible. I'm in. But we're being careful, right? This is about protecting yourself. Of course, Weston lied smoothly. Just protecting myself. As he ended the call, Weston gazed at the engagement photo Nash had uncovered. Laurel beaming beside Hargrove, her left hand prominently displaying a diamond that must have cost more than their first year's mortgage. The next level, Weston murmured, repeating Hargrove's words from the recording. Let's see how you handle the next level. Chapter 4. Reconstruction. 3 months after his world had shattered, Weston Pierce had transformed both his circumstances and himself. The divorce had been finalized with shocking speed, exactly as Nash had predicted. Laurel had secured the house and a significant portion of their liquid assets. Weston had not contested any of it. You're letting her walk all over you. Perry had complained when Weston signed the settlement papers without a fight. Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war, Weston had replied enigmatically. His new position at Hayes Innovation Group had quickly evolved beyond his initial role. Malcolm had recognized Weston's expanded vision and methodical approach, promoting him to director of special projects within 6 weeks. You've got an edge now, Malcolm had observed. Hungry, focused, life changes will do that, Weston had responded with a thin smile. Physically, he'd transformed as well. The stress of betrayal had initially caused him to drop 15 pounds from his already lean frame. He'd turned that crisis into opportunity, hiring a personal trainer and redirecting his anger into pre-dawn workouts that sculpted his body into something harder, more formidable. He'd moved into a downtown loft with industrial aesthetics and panoramic views of the city. Rather than furnishing it with comfortable, traditional pieces like those he'd shared with Laurel, he'd opted for minimalist design. Clean lines, functional spaces, nothing extraneous. Most significantly, he'd expanded his network strategically. Through Malcolm, he gained access to Houston's elite business circles. Through Nash, whose services he continued to retain, he developed connections with former military and law enforcement professionals. Through careful cultivation of his own professional reputation, he began receiving invitations to the very social events where Laurel had once networked while he stood awkwardly with a drink. On a cool October evening, Weston stood on the balcony of his loft, reviewing the latest intelligence from Nash. Laurel and Beckett Hargrove had married in a private ceremony in the Caymans, precisely as planned. They'd purchased a showcase home in River Oaks, hosting lavish dinner parties for firm partners and potential clients. Laurel had been made junior partner, undoubtedly accelerated by her connection to Hargrove. On paper, they appeared to be a power couple ascending the social and professional ladder with relentless momentum. Reality, as Weston now knew, was considerably more complex. His phone chimed with a message from Perry. "Found what you're looking for. It's worse than we thought." "Perfect," Weston murmured to himself. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Arlo entered carrying a bottle of aged whiskey, followed by Nash. "Figured it was time for a strategy session," Arlo announced, setting 3 glasses on the kitchen island. "Your timing is impeccable," Weston replied, gesturing to his phone. "Perry just confirmed what we suspected about Hargrove's finances." Nash accepted a glass of whiskey, his expression neutral. "You're sure about this approach? There are simpler ways to handle the situation." "I'm not interested in simple," Weston stated, his voice hardening. "They didn't just betray me. They stripped me of dignity. They laughed about it. Simple doesn't address that." Arlo nodded approvingly. "A man's reputation is worth fighting for. Worth killing for, in the old days." "No one's killing anyone," Weston clarified. "But they are going to lose everything they value, starting with their reputation." He unlocked his laptop and pulled up a sophisticated project management app, one he'd customized for this particular project. Each phase was meticulously outlined, with dependencies, risks, and contingencies mapped out with the same precision he would apply to an engineering challenge. "We're here," he indicated, pointing to a node labeled Phase 2, Resource Allocation. "Perry's findings move us to Phase 3 next week." Nash studied the screen, impressed despite himself. "You've thought of everything." "Not everything," Weston admitted. "There will be unexpected variables. But I've created sufficient flexibility to adapt." "What's this?" Arlo asked, pointing to a node marked only with a question mark. "That," Weston said, "is where Hargrove makes contact with me directly. I don't know exactly when or why yet, but he will. People like him always do." The 3 men spent the next 2 hours refining details, accounting for new information from Perry's cyber investigation. By the time they finished, the first phase of Weston's revenge was fully operational, moving in the background without any awareness from its targets. As Nash and Arlo departed, Nash paused in the doorway. "I've seen a lot of people seek vengeance over the years," he observed. "Most of them let emotion override strategy. You're different." "I've always believed in proper planning," Weston replied with a cold smile. "Whether building a skyscraper or dismantling a life." Alone again, Weston returned to his balcony, gazing at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Laurel and Beckett were attending a charity gala, champagne glasses in hand, networking and building their perfect life. Unaware that the foundation of that life had already been compromised, the supports weakening, the collapse mathematically inevitable. A text message illuminated his phone. A photo from Nash showing the couple arriving at the gala, Laurel resplendent in a designer gown, Hargrove commanding in a tuxedo. They emanated confidence and success. "Enjoy it while it lasts," Weston whispered, raising his glass in a mocking toast. Chapter 5. Infiltration. Beckett Hargrove believed in projecting success at all times. His tailored suits, luxury watches, and commanding presence in the courtroom all reinforced the image he'd cultivated over 2 decades of legal practice. At 40, he'd achieved what many attorneys only dreamed of, managing partner at a prestigious firm, married to a beautiful rising star, and respected throughout Houston's legal community. If he occasionally overextended himself financially to maintain this image, he considered it an investment in his brand. The gambling, well, that was his only real vice, a pressure release that he kept strictly compartmentalized from his professional life. Or so he believed. On a humid Tuesday morning, Beckett was reviewing case files in his corner office when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. "Mr. Victor Solomon is here to see you," she said. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he insists it's a matter that requires immediate attention." Beckett frowned. The name was vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it. "Give me 2 minutes, then send him in." He quickly searched his email for the name, finding nothing. A quick Google search revealed only that Victor Solomon was an investor with interests in multiple industries. The man who entered Beckett's office carried himself with the quiet assurance of someone accustomed to being taken seriously. In his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and penetrating blue eyes, he wore a bespoke suit that even Beckett's discerning eye recognized as exceptional quality. "Mr. Hargrove," Solomon extended his hand. Thank you for seeing me without notice. I assure you this meeting will be worth your time. Beckett indicated a chair. How can I help you, Mr. Solomon? Solomon placed a slim leather portfolio on the desk. I represent a consortium of investors interested in acquiring distressed properties with development potential. Your name has come up in our research. I'm an attorney, not a real estate broker, Beckett replied smoothly. Indeed, Solomon acknowledged with a thin smile. However, you do hold interest in several LLCs that control properties matching our criteria, including the Westlake development, which I understand is experiencing financial complications. Beckett maintained his professional expression, but internally he tensed. The Westlake project was his largest personal investment, a luxury condominium development that had encountered serious construction delays and cost overruns. He'd leveraged heavily to maintain his stake, using funds that weren't entirely his to deploy. I'm afraid you're mistaken about complications, Beckett countered. Westlake is proceeding as planned. Solomon nodded sympathetically. Of course, perhaps complications was too strong a word. Let's call them cash flow timing issues. My consortium is prepared to offer you a graceful exit strategy before those issues become public knowledge. He opened the portfolio and slid across a document containing figures that made Beckett's breath catch. The offer was substantially below what the project would be worth if completed, but significantly above what his share would be worth if the current financial trajectory continued. How do you have these numbers? Beckett demanded, his composure slipping. Solomon's smile didn't reach his eyes. Due diligence is our specialty, Mr. Hargrove. We've developed proprietary algorithms for identifying opportunities before they appear on the conventional market. He produced a business card, heavyweight cardstock with minimal information, just his name, a phone number, and the words strategic acquisitions. Take 24 hours to consider our offer, Solomon said, rising smoothly. It expires at noon tomorrow. After Solomon departed, Beckett immediately called his financial advisor, then his bank, then his partner in the Westlake project. Each conversation left him more unsettled than the last. Information that should have been closely held appeared to be circulating. Assurances he'd received about project financing seemed suddenly less solid. Throughout the day, Beckett fielded calls from other investors and partners, all seeking clarification on rumors that had seemingly materialized from nowhere. By evening, what had begun as an annoyance had evolved into a genuine threat to his carefully constructed world. At home that night, in their showcase River Oaks mansion, he attempted to maintain his usual confident demeanor as Laurel discussed an upcoming firm event. The senior partners will all be there, she was saying as she selected jewelry to complement her outfit. It's the perfect opportunity to discuss my strategy for the Callaway acquisition. Beckett murmured noncommittally, his mind elsewhere. Laurel turned from her vanity, her practiced smile fading. What's wrong? You've been distracted all evening. Nothing important, he assured her. Just a persistent client issue. It'll be resolved by tomorrow. Later, after Laurel had fallen asleep, Beckett sat in his home office, reviewing his finances with growing concern. The Westlake project was merely the tip of the iceberg. His investment portfolio, which had appeared robust on paper, revealed alarming vulnerabilities when examined closely. His phone chimed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. Midnight, tomorrow. Horseshoe Casino. Usual table. All debts must be settled. No further extensions. Beckett felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He'd managed to keep his gambling separate from his professional and personal life through a careful system of private accounts and cash transactions. Now those worlds were threatening to collide. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and made the call he'd been avoiding all day. Solomon, he said when the man answered. I'm interested in discussing your offer further. What Beckett couldn't know was that Victor Solomon did not exist beyond an elaborate digital footprint created by Perry's cybersecurity expertise. The man who had sat in Beckett's office was Nash Brewer, wearing a carefully crafted persona. And the consortium of investors was a fiction designed by West and Pierce to begin the systematic dismantling of Beckett Hargrove's life. Phase 3 of Weston's plan had been activated. In his downtown loft, Weston received confirmation from Nash that the meeting had gone exactly as anticipated. He took the bait, Nash reported. Already called to negotiate terms. He's rattled. Excellent, Weston replied. Perry's work with his creditors? In progress. 3 have already made contact demanding immediate payment. The casino message was particularly effective. Weston nodded with satisfaction. And Laurel? Still in the dark, Nash confirmed. Though she's noticed his distraction. Good, Weston said quietly. Let's proceed with the next step. Chapter 6. Escalation. Laurel Hargrove had always prided herself on maintaining control. Control of her career trajectory, control of her relationships, control of her environment. The past year had unfolded according to her carefully constructed plan. Divorce from Weston, marriage to Beckett, junior partnership at the firm, and the social status that accompanied all of it. Yet lately, small disruptions had begun appearing in her perfect life. Beckett's preoccupation with business matters he refused to fully explain. Subtle changes in how certain colleagues interacted with her. Unexpected questions from clients about her husband's involvement in projects she'd never heard him mention. On a Wednesday morning, Laurel sat in her office reviewing documents for an upcoming corporate merger when her assistant knocked softly. Miss Hargrove? There's a Ms. Valencia Reed here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. Laurel frowned. The name meant nothing to her. What's this regarding? She wouldn't say specifically, just that it concerns a personal matter requiring immediate attention. Curiosity overrode irritation. Send her in. Valencia Reed entered with the calculated grace of someone accustomed to making an impression. Tall and striking, with dark hair swept into an elegant updo, she wore a designer suit that rivaled Laurel's own. Thank you for seeing me, Miss Hargrove, Valencia said, her voice carrying a slight accent Laurel couldn't quite place. I apologize for the interruption, but after discovering the situation, I felt ethically obligated to speak with you directly. What situation? Laurel asked, gesturing for Valencia to sit. I'm a financial advisor with Meridian Partners, Valencia explained, presenting a business card. Your husband, Beckett Hargrove, has been a client of our firm for several years. Recent activities in his accounts have triggered our compliance protocols. Laurel maintained her professional composure, though alarm bells were sounding internally. I'm afraid I don't understand. Beckett handles his own financial matters. Ordinarily, I would address this with Mr. Hargrove directly, Valencia continued. However, the transactions in question involve jointly held assets, including your primary residence and the vacation property in Galveston. She removed documents from her portfolio, placing them on Laurel's desk. These are copies of loan applications using those properties as collateral. Both have your signature, though our verification process suggests. I never signed these, Laurel interrupted, examining the documents with growing horror. The signatures indeed resembled hers, but she had no knowledge of these transactions. That was our concern, Valencia said gravely. Additionally, there have been significant withdrawals from accounts listing you as co-owner. Nearly $1.2 million over the past 3 months. The amount staggered Laurel. That's impossible. Those funds were earmarked for our investment property. The Westlake development? Valencia asked, producing another document. According to this, Mr. Hargrove's stake in that project is being liquidated to cover other obligations. For nearly an hour, Valencia methodically outlined financial irregularities that painted a devastating picture. Beckett had apparently been moving money between accounts, taking out loans against their assets, and making high-risk investments without Laurel's knowledge. Why are you showing me this? Laurel finally asked, struggling to process the implications. Shouldn't you be reporting this to regulatory authorities? Valencia's expression softened with practiced sympathy. At this stage, these are compliance concerns, not definitive evidence of wrongdoing. I came to you first out of professional courtesy, and because, she hesitated, because I've seen this pattern before. Spouses left financially vulnerable when partners make imprudent decisions. After Valencia departed, promising to follow up with additional information, Laurel sat motionless at her desk. The perfect life she'd constructed was showing hairline fractures. She needed to confront Beckett immediately, but doing so required careful strategy. Any public suggestion of financial impropriety could damage both their reputations. She reached for her phone to call him, then stopped. Better to gather more information first. She began searching through their shared cloud storage, looking for financial records she'd previously left entirely to Beckett's management. What she found, or rather, didn't find, intensified her concern. Files that should have contained mortgage statements, investment reports, and tax documents were mysteriously empty or showed signs of recent deletion. A systematic scrubbing appeared to be underway. Laurel's legal training kicked in. She began taking screenshots, downloading what files remained, and documenting the irregularities. Whatever was happening, she needed to protect herself. Her phone chimed with a calendar alert. Dinner with the firm's senior partners and their spouses at 7 p.m. A crucial networking opportunity she couldn't afford to miss. Confronting Beckett would have to wait until after the event. Compartmentalizing her concerns, a skill she'd mastered long ago, Laurel refreshed her makeup, straightened her suit, and returned to the merger documents. Professional success was her lifeline. She wouldn't allow Beckett's apparent recklessness to jeopardize what she'd worked so hard to achieve. What Laurel couldn't know was that Valencia Reed was actually Talia Vance, an actress and former FBI financial crimes analyst hired by Nash Brewer. The documents she'd presented contained carefully manipulated data, real account numbers and properties, but with fabricated transaction histories designed to create exactly the suspicion and anxiety Laurel was now experiencing. Meanwhile, Weston sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks from Thornton, Blackwell, and Ross, watching real-time updates from Nash on his secure messaging app. Meeting lasted 72 minutes. Subject visibly disturbed upon conclusion. Immediately began reviewing financial records. Perfect. Phase 3 was progressing exactly as designed. The seeds of distrust had been planted in both targets. Weston's phone rang. Malcolm Hayes calling from the office. The city approved our proposal, Malcolm announced without preamble. The contract is ours. Your modifications to the structural engineering made all the difference. That's excellent news, Weston replied, genuinely pleased. Despite his focus on revenge, his professional integrity remained intact. The Hayes Innovation Group project represented his best work. We're celebrating tonight, Malcolm continued. The whole team. 7 o'clock at La Reserve. La Reserve, the exclusive French restaurant where Houston's elite conducted business over perfectly prepared cuisine. The same restaurant where, Weston knew from Nash's intelligence, Laurel and Beckett would be dining with Thornton's senior partners tonight. I'll be there, Weston promised, a cold smile forming. Sometimes the universe offered unexpected gifts. He sent a brief message to Nash, accelerating timeline. Phase 4 initiates tonight. That evening, as Weston entered La Reserve alongside Malcolm and the project team, he caught sight of Laurel at a table across the room. She hadn't yet noticed him, engaged in animated conversation with senior partner Douglas Thornton himself. Weston allowed Malcolm to select their table, seemingly unconcerned with the restaurant's other patrons. Throughout dinner, he participated fully in the celebration, offering insightful comments about the project and graciously accepting congratulations for his contributions. Only Nash, watching from a discreet corner table, would have recognized the calculated precision with which Weston orchestrated his movements throughout the evening. A trip to the bar that created a sight line to Laurel's table. A laugh at Malcolm's joke, perfectly timed to carry across the room. A handshake with the city's planning director, positioned where it couldn't be missed. Inevitably, Laurel spotted him. Weston observed the exact moment recognition dawned, the minute widening of her eyes, the momentary freeze in her champagne glass trajectory. He acknowledged her with the barest of nods before returning his attention to his colleagues. Later, as he stepped out of the restroom, Laurel was waiting in the hallway. Weston, she said, her voice carefully modulated. What a surprise. Laurel, he replied with neutral politeness. You look well. I didn't realize you knew Malcolm Hayes, she probed, clearly unsettled by his presence. I've been with Hayes Innovation Group for several months now, Weston informed her. We just secured the downtown revitalization contract. Oh, the news visibly surprised her. That's congratulations. Thank you. Weston made a show of checking his watch. If you'll excuse me, I should rejoin my team. Of course. Laurel hesitated, then added. It's good to see you doing well, Weston. He met her eyes directly for the first time. Life has a way of working out exactly as it should, doesn't it? Before she could respond, he walked past her, back to his colleagues. He didn't look back, but he could feel her gaze following him. At the adjacent table, Beckett Hargrove had watched the exchange with growing discomfort. The appearance of his wife's ex-husband, now apparently thriving, on this particular evening felt like one more destabilizing element in a week already filled with unwelcome surprises. When Laurel returned to their table, Beckett leaned close to ask, "What did he want?" "Nothing," Laurel replied, her voice tight. "Just being civil." The senior partners, sensing undercurrents but professionally discreet, smoothly redirected conversation to safer topics. But for both Beckett and Laurel, the evening's professional objectives had been compromised. Later that night, as they drove home in tense silence, Beckett finally spoke. "We need to talk about our financial situation." Laurel turned to him, eyes narrowed. "Yes, I think we do." Neither of them noticed the dark sedan following at a discreet distance, Nash Brewer at the wheel, recording device activated. Phase 4 was now fully operational. The pressure had been applied. The cracks were widening, and Weston Pierce was perfectly positioned to witness the impending collapse. Chapter 7, Detonation. 2 weeks after the Law Reserve encounter, Beckett Hargrove's carefully constructed life was unraveling. The Victor Solomon Consortium had withdrawn their offer for his stake in the Westlake development, triggering a cascade of financial consequences. His gambling creditors had become increasingly insistent, with thinly veiled threats replacing their previously discreet communications. Most disturbing, Beckett had discovered evidence that someone had been systematically accessing his private accounts, though cybersecurity experts could find no trace of the intrusion. Laurel had withdrawn emotionally and physically, spending longer hours at the office and sleeping in the guest bedroom when she did come home. Their conversations had devolved into terse exchanges about scheduling and household matters, any attempt at discussing deeper issues derailed by mutual suspicion. On a stormy Thursday morning, Beckett sat in his office, door closed, attempting to negotiate yet another extension with his bank. The call ended with a clear ultimatum: rectify the deficiencies within 72 hours or face foreclosure proceedings on multiple properties. Beckett loosened his tie, feeling the walls closing in. He needed cash immediately, substantial cash. His options had narrowed to a desperate few. Most involved professional suicide, legal jeopardy, or both. There was one possibility that might solve everything, though it required crossing a line he'd previously avoided. The Callaway acquisition, a major corporate merger that Laurel was spearheading for the firm. The preliminary filings were complete, but the public announcement was still a week away. With the right option strategy, he could leverage insider information into a 7-figure payday. It would be illegal, unethical, and detectable if anyone looked closely enough. But if he moved quickly and covered his tracks, his decision was interrupted by his assistant's voice on the intercom. "Mr. Hargrove, there's a man here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent." Beckett sighed in frustration. "Who is it?" "He says his name is Weston Pierce." Beckett froze. Weston Pierce, Laurel's ex-husband, the man whose life Beckett had helped dismantle without a second thought. What possible reason could he have for appearing now? Curiosity overrode caution. "Send him in." Weston entered with confident ease, looking nothing like the defeated man Laurel had described after their split. Tailored suit, athletic build, clear-eyed and composed. This was someone who had not merely survived adversity, but transformed through it. "Hargrove," Weston acknowledged with a nod. "Thank you for seeing me." "Pierce." Beckett remained seated, attempting to maintain the power dynamic. "What can I do for you?" Weston took a seat without waiting for invitation. "I think the question is what I can do for you." "I don't follow." "Let me be direct," Weston said, his tone conversational, but his eyes watchful. "You're in financial trouble. Serious trouble. The kind that ends careers and marriages." Beckett's face remained impassive through years of courtroom discipline, but internally his pulse quickened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Weston smiled thinly. "The Westlake development is 3 months from insolvency. Your personal accounts are overdrawn. The Harrison property is in pre-foreclosure. You owe substantial sums to individuals who don't issue payment reminders through official channels. And most recently, you've been considering insider trading as a way out." "That's absurd," Beckett snapped, but cold dread was spreading through his chest. How could this man possibly know these things? "Is it?" Weston removed a thumb drive from his pocket, placing it on the desk between them. "This contains comprehensive documentation of your financial activities for the past 18 months. Banking records, loan applications, gambling markers, communications with Victor Solomon, who, incidentally, doesn't exist." "What the hell is this?" Beckett demanded, not touching the drive. "Extortion?" "Not at all," Weston replied calmly. It's a courtesy call. In approximately 2 hours, this same information will be delivered to the Texas State Bar Ethics Committee, the SEC, the partners at Thornton, Blackwell, and Ross, and your wife. I thought you deserved advance notice. Beckett stood abruptly. Get out of my office before I call security. By all means, Weston said, remaining seated. Involve more witnesses. That would be helpful, actually. For several tense moments, the two men stared at each other across the desk. Then Beckett slowly sank back into his chair. What do you want? He asked, voice hollow. Want? Weston appeared genuinely perplexed. Nothing from you. This isn't a negotiation, Hargrove. It's notification. This is about Laurel, Beckett realized aloud. You're doing this because she left you for me. Weston's laugh carried no humor. You misunderstand. This isn't happening to you because of Laurel. It's happening because of your own choices, your own arrogance, your own belief that rules don't apply to people like you. He stood, adjusting his cuffs with deliberate precision. Though I am curious, when she learns what you've done, what you've risked, what you've lost, will she stand by you? Or will you suddenly become useless to her as well? Before Beckett could respond, Weston strode to the door. 2 hours, Hargrove. I suggest you use them wisely. After Weston's departure, Beckett sat immobile, mind racing through options. He could deny everything, claim Pierce was executing a vendetta. He could try to destroy evidence, though that would only compound his legal exposure. He could confess to Laurel, beg for her understanding and support. Or he could run. His hesitation consumed precious minutes. Finally, he reached for his phone, not to call Laurel or his partners, but to contact his private banker in the Caymans. I need to access the contingency account, he instructed. Today, the full amount. After receiving confirmation, Beckett opened his desk drawer and removed a passport and credit cards in the name of Robert Caldwell, an identity he'd established years ago as a just-in-case measure. He'd never seriously expected to use it. He left his office without explanation, ignoring his assistant's questions. In the parking garage, he transferred essential items from his Mercedes to a modest Honda registered to Robert Caldwell, which had been parked there for nearly a year. As he drove away from Thornton, Blackwell, and Ross for the final time, Beckett's phone began buzzing incessantly. He glanced at the screen, Laurel calling repeatedly. So it had already begun. He tossed the phone out the window onto the highway and accelerated toward the airport. Survival now took precedence over everything else. Miles away, in his downtown loft, Weston received Nash's message. Subject has fled. Contingency activated. Right on schedule, Weston murmured to himself, turning his attention to a different screen, one showing Laurel arriving at her office, unaware that her professional world was about to implode alongside her personal one. Chapter 8. Collapse. Laurel Hargrove's morning had begun with a series of warning tremors that quickly escalated to seismic proportions. First had been the cryptic email from the firm's managing partner, requesting her immediate presence in the conference room. Next came the stream of increasingly frantic calls and texts from Beckett, all of which she'd ignored due to her lingering anger from their latest argument. When she'd arrived at Thornton, Blackwell, and Ross, the receptionist's unusually solemn expression had confirmed something significant was unfolding. Now, sitting at the conference table surrounded by stern-faced senior partners and the firm's general counsel, Laurel struggled to process what she was hearing. These allegations are extremely serious, Douglas Thornton was saying, his usual warmth replaced by corporate detachment. Documents have been delivered to the firm indicating that Beckett has engaged in multiple instances of financial impropriety, including potential misuse of client funds, falsification of billing records, and most concerning, possible insider trading related to the Callaway acquisition. That's impossible, Laurel insisted, though her conviction felt hollow even to her own ears. There must be some mistake. The general counsel, Helena Marsh, slid a folder across the table. These are copies of the supporting documentation. The originals have apparently also been delivered to the State Bar and SEC. Laurel opened the folder with trembling hands. Bank statements, loan applications, email communications. Each page added another damning piece to the mosaic of deception. Most shocking were documents bearing her own forged signature, authorizing transactions she'd never approved. Beckett wouldn't. She began, then faltered. After Valencia Reed's visit and her own subsequent investigations, Could she honestly claim certainty about what Beckett would or wouldn't do? We've attempted to reach Beckett without success, Thornton continued. His assistant reports he left the office unexpectedly after meeting with a visitor. Building security confirmed the visitor was Weston Pierce. Laurel's head snapped up. Weston? That can't be coincidence. Our immediate concern is the firm's exposure, Helena stated flatly. Given your relationship with Beckett and your work on the Callaway acquisition, we need to understand your involvement. My involvement? Laurel echoed incredulously. I had no knowledge of any of this. That would be our preferred outcome, Thornton agreed. However, until this matter is fully investigated, we have no choice but to suspend your partnership responsibilities. You're suspending me? Laurel's voice rose. Based on accusations against my husband? Based on documented evidence that directly implicates accounts you co-control and transactions bearing your signature, forged or otherwise, Helena corrected. The ethics committee requires nothing less. Laurel fought to maintain composure. I need to speak with my husband, and I need my own counsel. Both advisable steps, Thornton agreed. We've arranged for security to escort you from the building after you've collected essential personal items. Your email and system access have been temporarily restricted. The humiliation of being escorted from Thornton, Blackwell, and Ross, the firm she'd sacrificed everything to join, burned like acid. Associates and paralegals averted their eyes as she passed, already aware of her disgrace through the lightning-fast office grapevine. In her car, Laurel finally checked her phone. 27 missed calls from Beckett. No voicemails. Dozens of text messages that grew increasingly desperate. We need to talk immediately. Don't go to the office today. Everything's falling apart. I can explain. I have to leave town for a while. I'm sorry. The final message had been sent 3 hours ago. I never meant for you to be caught in this. Goodbye. Cold realization settled over her. Beckett had run, leaving her to face the consequences alone. She tried calling him repeatedly. Each attempt went straight to voicemail. She tried their home landline. No answer. Finally, she drove to their River Oaks mansion, pressing her remote with shaking fingers as the gates swung open. Inside, the house felt eerily empty. Beckett's closet had been partially emptied, not hastily ransacked, but methodically culled of essential items. His passport was missing from the safe, along with the emergency cash they'd stored there. As the reality of her situation crystallized, Laurel sank onto their bed, mind reeling. In less than 12 hours, her carefully constructed life had disintegrated. Her career was in jeopardy. Her marriage was apparently over. Her financial security had vanished. Her professional reputation, the thing she valued above all else, was irreparably damaged. And Weston had been there, at Beckett's office, just before everything imploded. Anger flared, giving her momentary clarity. She grabbed her phone and dialed a number she'd deleted but never forgotten. When Weston answered, his voice was calm, unsurprised. "Laurel, what have you done?" she demanded, rage making her voice shake. "I haven't done anything, Laurel," he replied evenly. "I merely delivered information." "Information? You've destroyed my life." "No, Laurel," Weston corrected her. "Beckett destroyed your life. I simply ensured he couldn't hide it anymore." "This is about revenge," she accused. "Because I left you." "It's about consequences," Weston countered. "For choices made with full awareness of potential outcomes." Laurel's laugh was bitter. "And you've appointed yourself judge and executioner? Out of what wounded pride?" "You told me I was useless to you," Weston reminded her, his voice finally revealing a hint of emotion. "You threw my clothes on the lawn after I supported you for years. You called me predictable and boring while plotting with your lover. Did you really think there wouldn't be repercussions?" "So what now?" Laurel asked, defeat replacing anger. "You've won. Congratulations. Will destroying me make you feel better?" "This isn't about feeling better," Weston replied. "It's about balance. You took everything from me without hesitation or remorse. Now you understand what that feels like." "I can't believe you're the same man I was married to." "I'm not," Weston agreed. "That man died the day you told him he was useless to you. I'm what remained after the kindness and compromise were burned away." The line went silent. Laurel waited for more. Threats, gloating, further revelations. None came. "Is there anything I can do?" she finally asked, hating the pleading tone that had crept into her voice. "Any way to fix this?" "Fix what exactly?" Weston asked. "Your career?" Your marriage? Your reputation? Those weren't mine to break, Laurel. They're not mine to repair. After the call ended, Laurel wandered through the mansion that had once represented her triumphant ascent. Now it felt like a mausoleum for her ambitions. Tomorrow would bring investigators, attorneys, financial forensics experts. The professional and legal battles would be grueling, expensive, and public. Her phone rang again, her father's name appearing on the screen. Somehow he'd already heard. News of scandal traveled faster than news of success. Before she could answer, a car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, Laurel watched a man approach her front door with determined strides. Not Beckett, returning to face the music. Not her father, arriving to offer support. It was Logan Mitchell, Beckett's best friend and prominent real estate developer. His expression as he rang the doorbell conveyed urgency, tinged with panic. When she opened the door, Logan didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We have a serious problem. Is Beckett here?" "He's gone," Laurel informed him flatly. "Left town. Probably the country." "Damn it," Logan hissed. "Then you need to hear this directly. Beckett has done something unforgivable." "Join the club," Laurel replied bitterly. "Whatever financial scheme he's dragged you into." "It's not about money," Logan interrupted. "It's about Weston Pierce." Chapter 9, Judgment. Weston Pierce stood on the observation deck of Hayes Innovation Group's newest project, a sustainable mixed-use development that had transformed a formerly blighted section of downtown. 6 months had passed since the day Beckett Hargrove had fled the country, leaving Laurel to face the wreckage of their shared life alone. In those 6 months, Weston had been promoted to executive vice president, overseeing all major development initiatives for the firm. His reputation in the industry had soared, with architectural and engineering publications featuring his innovative approaches to urban renewal. He took no pleasure in Laurel's public downfall, but neither did he feel remorse for his role in it. The ethics committee had eventually cleared her of direct involvement in Beckett's financial crimes, but the stigma remained. No prestigious firm would touch her. She'd eventually taken a position with a small practice specializing in contract law, a significant step down from her partnership aspirations. Weston's phone vibrated in his pocket. Nash's number appeared on the screen. "Pierce," he answered. "He's been located," Nash reported without preamble. "Costa Rica. Small village on the Pacific coast. Living under the Caldwell identity. Condition? Running low on funds. The offshore accounts were frozen 2 months ago, as you arranged. He's been selling assets gradually to maintain his lifestyle, but that's nearly exhausted." Weston absorbed this information silently, gazing across the city skyline. The final piece was moving into position. "Proceed with the next phase," he instructed. "Standard protocol." After ending the call, Weston checked his watch. Almost time for his meeting with Malcolm. They were discussing expansion into the Austin market, potentially doubling the firm's footprint. As he turned to leave the observation deck, he noticed a familiar figure approaching. Logan Mitchell, looking considerably less prosperous than when Weston had last seen him. The insolvency of several Mitchell development projects had been collateral damage in Beckett's downfall, leaving Logan financially diminished though not ruined. "Mitchell," Weston acknowledged coolly. "This is unexpected. We need to talk," Logan stated without preamble. "About Beckett. I have nothing to say about Hargrove." "He's dying," Logan said bluntly. Weston's expression remained neutral. "And this concerns me how. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Doctors give him weeks, not months." "I'm sorry to hear that," Weston replied, his tone indicating the opposite. "Is there a point to this information?" Logan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "He wants to come home. To make things right before the end. Again, this doesn't concern me. The authorities are still looking for him," Logan pressed. "He can't return without facing prosecution. He's prepared to accept that, but he's asking for humanity. A chance to say goodbye to his family. To apologize to those he's wronged." Weston's laugh was soft and cold. "Including me? How touching." "Including you," Logan confirmed. "He's a broken man, Weston. He knows what he did." "Which part?" Weston asked, eyes hardening. "The part where he helped destroy my marriage? Where he built his success on other people's misery? Or the part where he attempted to have me killed?" The accusation hung in the air between them. 6 months ago, Logan had appeared at Laurel's door with the devastating revelation that Beckett, desperate and cornered, had reached out to associates with criminal connections. He'd offered substantial payment for a permanent solution to the Weston Pierce problem. Those associates, unbeknownst to Beckett, had been under federal surveillance for unrelated matters. The FBI had intercepted the communication and added solicitation of murder to the growing list of charges against the fugitive attorney. He wasn't thinking clearly, Logan argued weakly. He was desperate. We're all responsible for our choices, Mitchell, even desperate ones. So that's it. Logan challenged. You've won. Laurel's career is ruined. Beckett's dying in exile. What more do you want? Weston considered the question seriously. Justice isn't about what I want. It's about balance. Actions and consequences in appropriate proportion. He removed a business card from his wallet, blank except for a phone number, and handed it to Logan. If Hargrove is truly repentant, he'll call this number. Not for my forgiveness, which isn't available, but for the opportunity to face his actions with dignity. Logan pocketed the card. And who answers at this number? Someone who can arrange his return with minimal public spectacle, Weston replied. He'll face charges, but with medical considerations taken into account. Why would you do this? Weston's smile held no warmth. Because a deathbed in federal custody is still justice served. After Logan departed, Weston remained on the observation deck, contemplating the final movements in the symphony of retribution he'd orchestrated. Nash would ensure Beckett received the card and understood the offer, a choreographed surrender rather than a humiliating extraction. The federal prosecutor, with whom Nash had cultivated a relationship, would honor the arrangement. Beckett would return to American soil, face a judge, and almost certainly spend his remaining days in a prison medical facility. Balance would be achieved. Weston's phone chimed with a text from Perry. Incoming call from Al. Still want to proceed? Laurel. She'd been persistent in her attempts to reconnect, especially after learning about Beckett's murder-for-hire scheme. Her initial fury at Weston had gradually transformed into something more complex. Perhaps understanding, perhaps a desire for absolution. He deflected each overture with businesslike courtesy. Proceed, he texted back. Minutes later, his phone rang. Weston. Laurel's voice carried the weariness of someone who had been humbled by circumstance. Thank you for taking my call. What can I do for you, Laurel? He asked evenly. I heard about Beckett, she said. That he's ill. That he's trying to come back. Yes. Are you helping to facilitate that? In a manner of speaking, Weston confirmed. Justice will be served, but with consideration for his condition. Laurel was silent for a moment. That's more merciful than I expected. It's not mercy, Weston corrected her. It's efficiency. His suffering doesn't require my active participation. Another pause. I've been thinking about us. About what happened. I was cruel to you, Weston. Unconscionably cruel. Yes, you were. I've lost everything that I thought mattered, she continued. My career, my status, my future security. But the worst loss was my self-respect. I became someone I never thought I'd be. People often do, Weston observed dispassionately. I'm trying to apologize, Laurel said, frustration coloring her voice. To acknowledge how deeply I wronged you. I accept your acknowledgement, Weston replied. But if you're seeking forgiveness, I'm afraid that's not something I'm prepared to offer. Not even after all this time. After everything that's happened. Especially after everything that's happened, Weston said. The woman I loved, who I supported and believed in, threw my clothes on the lawn and called me useless when I was at my lowest point. She conspired with another man while sharing my bed. She treated a decade of marriage as a stepping stone to be discarded when no longer needed. His voice remained measured, almost clinical. That woman doesn't deserve forgiveness. She deserves exactly what she received, the natural consequences of her choices. I'm not that woman anymore, Laurel insisted, her voice breaking. I've changed. Perhaps you have, Weston allowed. But that doesn't alter what was done or erase its impact. Some debts can't be repaid with apologies or changed behavior. So there's no path forward? No possibility of reconciliation. Weston's laugh held genuine amusement. Is that what this is about? You've lost your powerful husband, your prestigious career, your social standing. And now you're considering whether your discarded ex-husband might be a viable backup plan. That's not fair, Laurel protested. It's entirely fair, Weston countered. And characteristically transactional of you. A long silence stretched between them. You really have changed, Laurel finally said. The Weston I knew could never be this cold. The Weston you knew died on that lawn, He replied simply, "I'm what emerged from the ashes. Stronger, clearer, unburdened by illusions about love or loyalty." After ending the call, Weston took one final look at the city spread before him, a landscape of opportunities and connections he now navigated with precision and purpose. The pain that had once consumed him had been transformed into something functional, a protective carapace that kept sentimentality and weakness at bay. 2 weeks later, Weston received confirmation that Beckett Hargrove had returned to U.S. soil and been taken into custody. 3 days after that, Beckett died in the medical wing of a federal detention center, his final confession documenting the full extent of his criminal activities: financial fraud, attempted solicitation of murder, and a pattern of professional misconduct spanning years. Laurel attended the small, private funeral alone. Weston did not. At his uncle's ranch that weekend, Weston sat on the porch, watching the sunset with Arlo. "Is it finished now?" Arlo asked, nursing a whiskey. "Have you found what you were looking for?" Weston considered the question. "Justice has been served. Balance has been restored." "That's not what I asked," Arlo observed. "Has it brought you peace?" Weston gazed at the horizon, where brilliant orange faded to deep purple. "Peace isn't the objective. Clarity is. Understanding that the world operates on power and consequence, not love and forgiveness." "Sounds lonely," Arlo noted without judgment. "Loneliness is preferable to betrayal," Weston replied. "I've built something solid now. Something that can't be taken away by someone else's whims or ambitions." As darkness settled over the landscape, Weston reflected on the symmetry of his journey. He had lost everything, then methodically rebuilt his life while ensuring those who had wronged him experienced equivalent losses. They had shown no mercy. He had shown none in return. It wasn't happiness he felt as he contemplated this completion. It was something more elemental, the cold satisfaction of a mathematical equation perfectly balanced, a structural design bearing precisely the right load. The price of betrayal had been paid in full. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.